Several million years ago, our Earth was a newborn world made up of raging lava and rocks. Millions of years passed, and gradually the planet began to take on shapes familiar to humans. However, a series of cataclysms of unprecedented power continued to torment the Earth time and again, changing its landscape over millennia. Therefore, it is not surprising that the rocks and stones, which were direct witnesses to these events, are so attractive and interesting to people. This collection features the most impressive stone formations on our planet, capable of striking the imagination of any viewer. Enjoy watching. Spread out in the very heart of the Australian continent, the rock formation Uluru holds incredible value both historically and culturally. Uluru itself is a red-orange rock that seems to have emerged from nowhere, standing alone in the middle of endless plains. Its sloping, smooth sides gently meet the ground like a frozen sand fountain, flooding the surroundings with red sandstone. In fact, Uluru is mostly made of this sandstone in a whimsical mix with feldspar. This geological formation began to form over 900 million years ago and has survived several major geographical transformations, including drifting through long-gone seas. Mountains eroded under the effects of erosion, were covered again with mud and sand, and crumbled once more, which eventually led to the formation of the rock as we know it today. Interestingly, the name Uluru belongs to the indigenous people who lived in this area more than 30,000 years ago. The rock was also often called Cappadocia, but what exactly these names mean is no longer known. During the era of geographical discoveries, when Europeans set foot on Australian soil, Uluru was discovered by explorer Ernest Giles in 1872, marking the beginning of the study of this area. In 1920, despite the obvious land rights of the Aboriginal people, the area around Cappadocia became a nature reserve. Over time, the property rights of the indigenous people were increasingly ignored by the Australian authorities, but they managed to regain their land in 1985, becoming full-fledged managers of the park and residents of the region. In 1987, Uluru was included in the UNESCO World Heritage List, and all mining in the region is now prohibited. However, tourists are still welcome to visit the park, especially since, in addition to the rock itself, one can encounter rare species of plants and animals here. Nature on our planet sometimes loves to imitate itself, creating astonishing phenomena in the most unexpected places. Ocean tides draw trees of unimaginable beauty on the sand, while rocks acquire soft and smooth curves similar to waves. Of course, such metamorphoses require an indecent amount of time, and a human life is far too short to notice them. But from the height of the millennia that have passed, one can clearly see the results of the transformations the rocks have undergone. A vivid example of all this is the Wave Rock in Western Australia, also known as Caterkish. This granite rock rises like a gentle wave above the valley to a height of nearly 15 meters and is considered part of Hayden Wildlife Park. It began to form more than 2.5 billion years ago, though the processes that led to its current appearance belong to the Cretaceous period. In addition to its incredible historical value, the local population also reveres the rock, attributing special cultural significance to it. The Ballardong tribe even has a legend about Caterkish, according to which the wave in the granite was created by the rainbow serpent after it had drunk its fill from the waters of the world. Its body swelled greatly, and when it began to move, it accidentally touched the rock, leaving a mark. For modern Australians, the Wave Rock also has practical value, as a reservoir built right above it supplies the town of Hayden with clean water. Cappadocia also serves as a tourist attraction along with other park landmarks along the Dreaming Trail. Hippos, Yon Rock, the Humps, Puntapin, Jellikin, Lake Dumbleyung, and Mulkus Cave. Madagascar, arguably the most isolated island from Earth's ecosystem, is famous not only for its unique species of flora and fauna, but also for landscapes that cannot be found anywhere else on the planet. Against this backdrop, one cannot forget about Tsingy de Bemaraha, an impressively vast natural reserve of Madagascar's Bemaraha National Park, occupying an area of over 150,000 hectares, whose main attraction is the stone forest. Over millions of years, the limestone rocks in this area have been subject to karst, a natural process of leaching, dissolving, washing out, and weathering of rock material, which eventually led to the creation of voids, followed by the partial or complete collapse of rock formations. It is this process that caused the formation of the stone forest, a landscape so unique that in 1990 it was included in the UNESCO World Heritage List. Tsingy de Bemaraha is renowned not only for its rock formations, but also for the endemic species that live there, for whom this untouched by man nature has become home. Nevertheless, tourists and researchers still regularly visit the reserve to admire the unusual views and conduct studies of the natural labyrinth of Tsingy de Bemaraha, filled with unexpected ascents and mysterious caves. Due to such an unusual landscape, one must be seriously prepared to visit the park. It is especially important to consider one's physical fitness, and perhaps this factor is the reason for the rather modest popularity of Tsingy de Bemaraha among tourists. On the other hand, this may be a good thing, as it allows the park's nature to be preserved in its pristine form for a longer time. A small picturesque natural treasure is hidden in the bay of the South China Sea and bears the eloquent name Halong, which means the place where the dragon descended to the earth. Of course, we are talking about the bay of the same name, which is located within the territory of Vietnam. This place is not only listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but also holds the title of one of the 7 modern wonders of the world. Halong Bay covers an area of 1,500 square kilometers, which includes not only about 3,000 islands, but also the entire coastal waters. Most of these islands and rocks, covered with dense vegetation, remain unexplored to this day, and the local population, numbering about 1,500 people, prefer to live in floating fishing villages where bamboo rafts serve as their homes. They raise sharks, enjoy the gifts of nature, and have maintained this way of life for more than 300 years. Several legends are associated with the formation of the bay. According to one of them, this area was accidentally created by a dragon that crawled out of a cave. Stretching after a long sleep, it crushed the earth with its tail, and water immediately rushed into the resulting cracks, eventually turning into a beautiful landscape. Another version says that the dragons were messengers of the gods, sent to the bay to protect it from enemies. These giant creatures spat precious stones, hitting enemy ships with them. Later, these gems turned into the islands that filled Halong Bay. Such legends, of course, are just the tales of local residents, but the coastal area with thousands of small islets has repeatedly saved Vietnam from enemy attacks. For example, during the Mongol invasion, when the local waters became the grave of thousands of Kublai Khan's ships, which were sunk thanks to stakes hidden underwater. In addition to the islands, the bay is full of karst caves, each with its own feature. For instance, the Drum Cave makes a characteristic knocking sound when the wind blows, while the Surprise Cave produces a mysterious light. Tourists visiting the bay will always find something to do, as diving, rock climbing, Various excursions and ordinary boat trips across the bay are actively promoted here. Sometimes, not only ancient rock formations deserve attention, but also those created by the power of nature relatively recently. One example of such a formation is the Elephant Rock, which appeared on Heimaey Island in Iceland in 1973. That year, the Eldfell volcano erupted with flows of molten lava that reached the ocean and solidified into a recognizable shape. The new rock doesn't just resemble an elephant, lowering its monumental trunk into the water. From a distance, it is indistinguishable from a real animal. Everything is preserved in it: the soft folds of skin, sunken eyes, and characteristic gray color. The best way to admire this natural wonder is from a boat, but when visiting the attraction, it's important to consider the whims of the weather and choose the most suitable lighting. That's probably why most tourists who come to the site always bring cameras, trying to capture the memory of this gift of nature at the perfect moment. The relatively young country of Myanmar possesses one of the oldest civilizations in the world and is in many ways a rather contradictory place. Since the founding of the new state, civil wars have not ceased, but at the same time, there has never been a break in the stream of tourists wishing to make a pilgrimage to local shrines. Although Myanmar boasts an incredible number of pagodas, there is one among them that evokes feelings as contradictory as the country itself. This refers to the Caktio Pagoda, often called the Golden Rock, and deservedly so. The architectural ensemble of this place is an impressive sight. On a kilometer-high sheer cliff balances a golden boulder topped with a small golden pagoda. According to legend, inside this structure is a strand of the Buddha's hair, which he left as a gift to a monk. Deciding that such a treasure must be preserved at all costs, the hermit went to King Tissa and, on his advice, the hair was sealed inside the Caktio Pagoda. Interestingly, according to legend, it was not humans but actual Burmese spirits who built the pagoda, lifting the stone base from the seafloor and placing it atop the cliff before covering everything in gold leaf. It is believed that it is the Buddha's hair that keeps the pagoda on top and prevents it from falling, even when the boulder is deliberately rocked and a rope is passed beneath it. This place is quite popular with both tourists and pilgrims, for whose convenience a small hotel town was built near the pagoda. Although tourists are not prohibited from visiting the Caktio Pagoda, there are a few rules here that cause some confusion. Firstly, women must not come close to the shrine, let alone touch the rock, and secondly, foreigners are forbidden to stay overnight on the summit. These are rather strange rules, especially considering the challenging road, but at least most of the way can be traveled by car or palanquin. The territory of Siberia remains poorly studied compared to other places on the planet, but this fact has helped preserve the local nature in its untouched, pristine state. Perhaps that's why, despite the presence of people in Yakutia, the world only learned about the Lena Pillars 30 years ago, a unique geological formation of Cambrian limestone that took millions of years to form along the Lena River. These impressive stone cliffs, up to 100 meters high, decorate the riverbank for a stretch of 40 kilometers. The rock formations have been recognized not only as part of Russia's natural heritage, but were also included in the UNESCO World Heritage List in 2012. In the Lena Pillars National Park, visitors can admire these stone giants and explore other attractions, such as the remains of ancient mammoths, bison, and rhinoceroses, and even see the campsites of ancient people and the tools they left behind. In addition, the park is home to many wild animals, some of which are listed in the Red Book. Far from human civilization, in the Troicka-Pechorsky district of the Komi Republic stands a unique natural ensemble of 7 stone giants, which deservedly earned a place among the 7 wonders of Russia in 2008. This site is called Manpupuner, but it is also often referred to as the Weathering Pillars. And this is not surprising, since the rocks owe their origin to millennia of relentless winds blowing across the Ural Mountains. Initially, Manpupuner was part of a mountain range, but as a result of a series of destructions and erosion, only these formations made of hard sericite quartz slate remained from the once majestic mountains. Despite the significant remoteness of this place from human settlements, among the local population, Manpupuner is known as the Small Mountain of Idols, and human ascent to it was considered sacrilegious. Today, however, it is a fairly popular spot among tourists, and visiting it serves as a kind of challenge to one's physical fitness. In fact, there are several routes leading to the Weathering Pillars, not only from the Komi Republic, but also from Perm Krai and Sverdlovsk Oblast. Each of these routes is unique and may involve a hiking march through the mountains or an exciting car tour with a partial river journey, but it is also possible to reach the summit by helicopter. In winter, a ski route is laid to Manpupuner. However, visiting this natural marvel is strictly regulated by the Nature Reserve Administration, and without a special permit, it is not possible to see the Weathering Pillars in person. The process of erosion occurring in rocks and stones sometimes creates amazing natural sculptures that astonish people with their boldness and surrealism. A vivid example of such a phenomenon can be found in the balancing rocks of Chiremba, which adorn Matobo National Park in Zimbabwe. These stones were formed from igneous rocks millions of years ago, but due to the effects of wind and water, they underwent erosion, during which the outer soft layer crumbled and weathered away, revealing the hard rocks hidden within, frozen in whimsical balance. There is no shortage of such stone sculptures in Matobo Park, but the most famous among them is Dombore Mare, also known as the Money Rock. It received this name for good reason, as the image of this natural sculpture adorns the logo of the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe and the country's $1 trillion banknote, which has been printed since 1981. Tourists who come to see the balancing rocks of Chiremba can admire nature's creations while walking along specially laid out trails, calmly photograph local attractions, and fully appreciate the beauty of the untouched wilderness of Zimbabwe, which has been forming over thousands of years. To reach this landmark in Saudi Arabia, you'll have to travel deep into the Tabuk region. That's where Al-Naslaa stands, a sandstone rock in the middle of the desert, difficult to explain, which some mysterious force has surgically sliced exactly in half. Scientists are still scratching their heads over who, when, and why this boulder was cut, but so far they cannot reach a consensus. Some claim the cut was made with a laser, others are convinced ancient tools and water were used. However, both of these theories collapse under scrutiny, as there is no sign of water or even human structures for many kilometers around. Nevertheless, this unusual stone has long fascinated people, as it bears many drawings and inscriptions, some of which date back to prehistoric times. Another theory involves the interference of extraterrestrial civilizations, but why aliens would want to cut a boulder in the middle of the desert is a good question. The most plausible theory seems to be the natural weathering of a crack in the rock, which was relentlessly subjected to natural processes, ultimately leading to the stone's division. Of course, one cannot rule out a clever tourist move by the Saudi authorities, who may have used this unusual attraction to draw attention to this part of the desert. In any case, Al-Naslaa has become a very well-known rock around the world, garnering considerable interest among scientists and tourists. Historically, places that people have not managed to reach over the millennia have not only preserved their pristine beauty, but continue to amaze the imagination with their unique shapes. A vivid example of this idea is Goblin Valley in the state of Utah, USA, which was discovered just over 100 years ago. This place was well hidden in one of the driest parts of the country and was only accidentally discovered thanks to Arthur Chaffin and his companions, who were engaged in cargo transportation and were looking for more convenient routes in the area. When the local landscape first appeared before the men's eyes, they immediately noticed the resemblance of the stone figures to characters from fairy tales and legends, such as goblins and stone giants. Leaving their find untouched for almost 20 years, Arthur later returned to the valley, where he took many photographs and promoted it so effectively that in 1964 this area was declared a state park. The stone pillars that adorn Goblin Valley are locally called hoodoo. These are unusual rock formations created through the process of erosion and the settling of hard rock on softer ones. Due to constant exposure to wind and rain, the weaker rock was washed away and weathered, securing the caps on the stone mushrooms. There are a great many such rock formations here, and their sizes can vary from 1 to several meters. Anyone can admire this natural wonder, as a special route has been laid out for the convenience of tourists. All you need to do is pay a few dollars for park admission, and you can fully enjoy the otherworldly landscapes. However, it is better to visit Goblin Valley in the autumn or spring, as it is unbearably hot here in summer, and in winter the snow prevents a full appreciation of the beauty of the hoodoo. The Otago Coast in New Zealand is adorned not only by pristine clean sand and transparent tides, but also by unique stone formations known as the Moeraki boulders. These stones are typically spherical in shape, less often oval, with diameters ranging from 50 centimeters to over 2 meters. However, what is striking about the boulders is not so much their appearance as the reasons for their formation. The stones began to form in Paleocene mudstone around 60 million years ago, when deep-sea silt and calcite underwent massive diffusion and began to roll into balls. Over time, this formation accumulated many layers, then fossilized and remained on the seabed for 5 million years. When the sea level dropped, the Moeraki boulders resurfaced and, under the influence of coastal erosion, began to develop cracks. It is worth noting that similar stones have been found not only in New Zealand, but also in other parts of the world, such as England. However, the Maori tribe has another legend explaining the origin of the Moeraki boulders, according to which the stones are parts of an eel basket left behind after the wreck of the canoe Orai Te Uru, and the cracks on them are the marks left by fishing nets. Of course, this is just local folklore, but it regularly brings tourists to the Otago coast, where they can enjoy beautiful sunsets among the stones. Since the Moeraki boulders have significant cultural and historical value, taking them away is strictly prohibited. This official ban was a response by authorities to the regular removal of stones from the shore that occurred several years ago. In the mountainous region of Colombia lies one of the most impressive rocks on our planet, which, despite being battered by the winds of time, has remained almost untouched by erosion. Of course, we are talking about El Peñón de Guatape, also known among locals as Piedra de Guatape and Piedra del Peñol. The rock is located right on the border between the towns of El Peñol and Guatape, which causes the residents of both settlements to claim the mountain as their own. This irreconcilable dispute went so far that a desperate trio from Guatape climbed the rock and painted a huge graffiti on it. Fortunately, the vandals were stopped, but the white painted letter G and the unfinished U still stand out on one of the slopes. This is just one of the curious incidents associated with El Peñón de Guatape. Despite the fact that the rock became a national monument of Colombia back in the 1940s, local farmers somehow managed to sell it to Luis Eduardo Villegas López in 1954, who, taking advantage of his ownership rights, built a staircase to the top consisting of 650 steps. This staircase is still in use today, and thanks to it, an observation deck and a 3-story tower will be built at the top, offering a stunning view of the local reservoir. In addition to man-made attractions, El Peñón de Guatape can boast the presence of a plant from the bromeliad family, Pitcairnia heterophylla, growing at its summit, which is not found anywhere else. And this is a rather surprising fact, considering that the rock itself is composed of quartz, mica, and feldspar, making it poorly suited for plant growth. Among the English fields of Yorkshire lies one of the most amazing and ancient natural parks, Brimham Rocks. Here, created by the hand of nature itself, stand striking rock formations that have acquired fantastical shapes over hundreds of millions of years. The creation of such stones is the result of millennia of erosion, which relentlessly acted on the sandstone rocks through water, wind, ice, and temperature changes, shaping the local landscape into what we see today. In 1958, the authorities of England designated Brimham Rocks as a specially protected natural area, but this does not prevent tourists from enjoying the scenery. The local rocks can be viewed all year round. You just need to visit the park during working hours from 8 in the morning until sunset. Of particular interest are the rock formations that have names, such as Dancing Bear, Sitting Toad, Mother Shipton, and others. However, the most famous attraction of the park is Idol Rock, which is sometimes also called the Druid's Writing Desk. This nearly 5-meter high stone balances on the tip of a tiny base shaped like a cone. Despite its seemingly unstable appearance, it stands firmly in place, and only the winds of erosion might shift it over time. In the north of Taiwan, not far from the town of New Taipei, lies the country's main attraction, the Yehliu Geo Park, which is listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The park received this status for good reason, as the rock formations found there have an incredibly ancient history. About 4 million years ago, as a result of the collision between the Philippine and Eurasian tectonic plates, a cape nearly 2 kilometers long was formed. Due to constant coastal erosion and monsoons over the years, the rocks have been heavily washed away, leading to the formation of unique stones composed mainly of limestone and carbonate rocks. With a bit of human imagination, many of the resulting stones were given names, such as the Fairy Princess Rock or the Ice Cream Rock. In addition, fossils left behind by long-extinct creatures that once inhabited our planet are often found here. However, the main highlight of the Yehliu Geo Park is the rock called the Queen's Head, which closely resembles the bust of an Egyptian queen. Sadly, all these stones may irreversibly disappear in the coming decades due to nature itself, which continues the process of weathering and erosion daily. That is why the flow of tourists visiting this place never dries up. Any day could be the last for these rocks. The Turkish region of Cappadocia is widely known among tourists not only for the abundance of hot air balloons rising into the sky with the first rays of the sun, but also for its fantastic landscapes, as if they came straight from the pages of children's fairy tales about fairies and giants. Although there is nothing mystical about the unique rock formations of Cappadocia, they are simply remnants of an ancient lava valley formed by the volcanoes Hassan, Guluda, Develi, Ketchiboiduran, Melendez, and Ergius. When these fiery mountains erupted, they generously flooded the entire surrounding area with lava and tuff, which layered upon each other and, over the course of millennia, underwent erosion, thereby transforming into the now famous, mesmerizing landscapes. In addition to nature itself, people also made significant efforts building reliable shelters in the rock formations to protect themselves from bad weather and invaders, since many foreign peoples such as the Hittites, Persians, Musky, and Romans often took an interest in Cappadocia due to its unique terrain. Each civilization left its traces and settlements in the rocks, which have survived to this day: Göreme, Derinkuyu, and Chavushin. One should not forget about the hand of nature, which created the charming rock park of Pashaba. And tourists visiting Cappadocia will always find something to do, from excursions through the endless remnants of ancient civilizations to long walks through the mountains and skies. In eastern California, USA, lies the amazing saline Mono Lake, which serves as a regular stopover for migratory birds. But the most interesting thing about the lakeside area is not the birds, but the Tufa towers that appeared on the surface in the 1990s. These towers are natural formations of calcium carbonate, which was deposited underwater over thousands of years. Initially, Mono Lake was significantly deeper and these stone columns were hidden beneath the surface, but due to a sharp drop in water level caused by a Los Angeles water diversion program, the lake's level fell by 15 meters. It was then that the world saw this amazing landscape, which instantly boosted the tourist value of the lake, as people now frequently visit the area to admire the Tufa towers. In addition to a convenient walking trail around the lake, locals offer tourists diving services and historical tours. Besides the towers, visitors can also explore Pahoa Island, located on the lake and of volcanic origin, as well as the Negat Peninsula, which became such after the water receded. Although Mono Lake doesn't offer many activities, its otherworldly views more than make up for this shortcoming. Sometimes, even a single split rock can become a local landmark, as happened with the Split Apple Rock in New Zealand. This stone has become an adornment of the bay in Abel Tasman National Park, located between the Marahau River and the town of Kaiteriteri. The rock itself is notable mainly for its shape, resembling an apple sliced precisely in half, but what matters here is not how it looks, but how the attraction came to be. The age of this granite stone is nearly 120 million years. According to scientists, before the beginning of the Ice Age, it was a rock with a small crack. Water got into it, froze, and slowly widened the gap, which led to the further splitting of the granite. However, the Maori tribe has its own thoughts and legends on the matter. They believe that local deities fought over this stone and, using their power, caused the rock to crack exactly in the middle. Perhaps due to the fact that besides endless beaches with crystal clear water and white sand, there are no other attractions in the bay, the Split Apple Rock has become very popular with tourists who try to swim or walk to it depending on the tide. Fortunately, getting to the stone is not difficult. It is only 50 meters from the shore. Not far from the town of Bushmills in Northern Ireland lies the so-called Giant's Causeway, included in the UNESCO World Heritage List. This place was formed as a result of a series of powerful underwater volcanic eruptions that occurred here almost 60 million years ago. The lava spewing from the Earth's depths covered the seabed and, in the process of rapid cooling, took on the unusual shape of hexagons. Of course, not all the basalt and andesite columns formed in this way have 6 sides. Some have square shapes, others may have 5, 7 or 8 sides. There are about 40,000 such columns at the Giant's Causeway, but no one keeps an exact count. And following the traditions of most ancient peoples, the Celts had a legend associated with the origin of this place. According to the legend, the stone bridge was created by the mighty warrior von Makue, who could not peacefully coexist with his neighbor on the other side of the bay, the one-eyed giant Benandonner. But Von did not want to sail across to the other shore, so he decided to undertake a grand construction. He worked long and hard laying a stone embankment until he finally finished the bridge, but after completing the construction he was tired and returned home to rest. Benandonner, noticing the previously unseen structure, crossed the strait himself and ended up in Fon's house. The giant's wife, Una, possessed impressive wisdom and cunning, so she had dressed her husband as a baby in advance. Upon meeting the uninvited guest, Una offered him some pancakes stuffed with iron skillets, and to avoid arousing Benandonner's suspicion, began feeding the baby the same pancakes, but without the filling. The giant, struggling with the treat, saw how the infant easily devoured one pancake after another and became terribly frightened, imagining what the baby's father must be like, and fled in terror, destroying the newly built bridge behind him. Although this is just a local legend, it continues to charm tourists who come to see the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland and involuntarily makes them believe that once upon a time, giants truly lived in this place. The American state of Utah is rich in unique natural rock formations that never cease to amaze every tourist visiting this area. One of the most iconic places of the state is Bryce Canyon National Park, which is essentially more of an amphitheater created by nature and time. The formation of this valley began at the end of the Cretaceous period and the beginning of the Cenozoic era, when the Cretaceous Sea still washed over this area. Under its influence, sandstone and shale began to be deposited, forming a plateau. As the water receded, the rocks underwent erosion, gradually rising and cracking. The weaker rocks began to weather, while the remaining rock formations formed hoodoo, tall stone pillars of incredible shapes. This process continues to this day, annually raising the hoodoo by a few centimeters, which leads to the destruction of existing pillars and the formation of new ones. Curiosity is aroused not only by the geological features of the region, but also by the history of the local people who lived among the rocks for 10,000 years. Of course, modern settlers moved into the area much later, but that did not stop Native Americans from attributing a few legends to the hoodoo. According to legend, the evil spirit Coyote turned the people living here into stone for their sins, or, according to another version, out of envy of their mythical origins. In the 18th century, European settlers began to explore these lands, which led to the area being granted the status of a national park in 1928. To this day, Bryce Canyon hospitably opens its doors to all who wish to explore the hoodoo and the natural labyrinth of the amphitheater year-round. The park is especially breathtaking at sunrise and sunset, when the fading sunlight colors the rocks forming the hoodoo in various hues, from creamy to bright scarlet. In addition to admiring the rocky beauty, it is also quite easy to encounter wild animals here, such as mountain lions, bears, and deer. Quite often, people humanize natural objects and processes, giving them human names and creating various stories about them. Thus, in ancient times, storms were sent by thunder gods, tides were controlled by sea deities, and sudden landslides and earthquakes were the work of earth spirits. Over time, people learned to explain these phenomena from a scientific point of view, but the habit of giving legends to certain objects in which they are portrayed as people remained. This gave rise to several mountains that received stories, relatives, and names, such as the Three Sisters, located in the Blue Mountains National Park in Australia. The tallest mountain is named Meini, the middle one Wimla, and the youngest Gunadu. According to a local legend, they were once three sisters living in the Katoomba tribe, but their forbidden love for young men from a neighboring settlement led to the start of a war. Under the cover of night, three brothers kidnapped the girls, intending to marry them, but the Katoomba shaman used magic and turned the beauties into mountains. However, he was killed during the battle, and there was no one left to break the spell. So they remain standing, turned to stone to this day. The legend certainly adds a certain charm to these mountains, but in reality their creation was the result of centuries of erosion, which gave the soft sandstone a unique appearance. The Three Sisters Rocks are open for public visitation, and a path of more than 800 steps leads to the summit, from which the best view of the valley opens up. The ancient Druids who once inhabited the lands of England left behind many stone artifacts that played the role of altars in their mystical rituals. The most famous among them is probably Stonehenge, but there are plenty of other similar curiosities. The altar stone, also known as the Druid stone, stands in Nottinghamshire, not far from the famous Sherwood Forest featured in Tales of Robin Hood. This natural monolith, several thousand years old, stands in the middle of farmland and is a 4-meter-tall stone composed of limestone, sand, and gravel. But the most interesting and unusual feature of this rock is the man-made passage 2 meters high, which, according to Celtic legends, is somehow connected to the fertility festival of Beltane, traditionally celebrated on the 1st of May. Although there is no direct evidence that the stone was used in Druid rituals, local residents believe that if a sick child is passed through the hole in the rock, they will be miraculously healed. Today, the altar stone is on private property and free access to it is prohibited, but it can be seen quite well from the road, which savvy tourists take advantage of when visiting this landmark of both natural and cultural significance. And that's all for now. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell. Your support is the best reward for me. Thank you for watching. See you soon. Bye.